And the reason for our audience is that Anubhav was in Japan for 2 weeks, and that's where Anubhav. There were a lot of questions that came in. Though we did interview, there were a lot of Q and A, a lot of great response from the audience. Uh, we had the building and pest inspector. We had a financial advisor, multiple people, right? So, but there were a lot of questions related to property, so which I just parked them. I thought that why not do a session with you so that me and Puru can just ask those questions to you. And there have been few changes in Victoria as well. So one thing I'm curious, being Anubhav having his antennas on for property, how was the Japanese property market? Did you assess there as well, going through some real estate there as well, or you kept on a holiday mood, not looking here and there?
Now property is in the blood, so it's always going to keep carrying on to see what's happening. So look, I mean, we are in a very different dynamics to, of course, Japan. And Japan with 120 million people versus us with 27 million, and a completely different land size, scape, demographics, and the geography, changes everything. So if you see, of course, Tokyo or all of the nearby cities, it's fully populated with lots of apartments, small boxes that you can see, and that's what sells over there. That's what people understand. That's how they live in, and it's an apartment culture, really. To be very honest. So that's not the case, in majority cases in Australia because we all love our backyards. So and the front yards, but that sort of seems to change, as people sort of question affordability in Australia. So maybe the future trends may look different, but clearly, highly populated area and places like Japan, or even for that matter, any other Asian countries, you will normally notice that the type of properties that are popular, like townhouses, are not much, but you can see a lot of big buildings and apartments in there. That's really what sells, and they sell at premium prices, really. So that's what we're talking. It's totally different to in Australia. But
Wow.
I actually, happened to be in Kyoto, and we looked at a building which had about maybe 50 floors to it. And I just simply asked a question around what's a two-bedder going to cost here to live in with a space of maybe 30 square meters as such. Because people literally, the houses are small, even in a normal townhouse, right from looking at the garage size, and the car itself is so small that you need a single garage to really put in their cars in there, and the height of their doors are so short as well that you know it's difficult for people like us to sort of get us navigate a path to their houses as such. So even for that matter, hotel spaces, if you look at it, the room sizes are really really small in Tokyo, and that is similar with apartment, but something 30 square meters, 40 square meters apartment, two bedroom in a premium location, you're talking over 1.5 million plus. So really people live in cramped spaces, but they're very comfortable doing that.
Wow. No, that's why I thought that because that's why I wanted to, because there is no way Anubhav is not looking at property, even if he's traveling,
Absolutely.
even in your dreams as well. If I just wake you up, what's happening in the market, Anubhav will have the latest data. So you are
Yes.
a living
So,
AI for us.
thank you.
But yeah, Anubhav, because I think Puru, some there was a lot of talk about stamp duty concessions and everything. So do you have anything specific, Puru, based on your? We got a lot of queries from our audiences in last 3 4 weeks regarding that. So I will let Puru
Yeah,
ask that question.
yeah. I think the question is having few layers to it. So one is, I think, the declaration about stamp duty concessions for new builds of certain types. So how does that impacts the markets in Victoria for home buyers, and the subsequent markets related to the existing properties? That's one. Um, Maybe we'll stick to one and then come to the second one. Otherwise, it will be too many questions in one question.
Yeah, look, I mean, I guess before we just dive into a particular type of that question with
Hmm.
Victorian duty and what's happening with prices, I think broadly speaking, just to look at Victoria right now over the last 3 4 years, property prices haven't really taken off since we've been in lockdowns in Victoria, and that's predominantly being an issue with the way the government policies have been structured around this, which is quite clear right now because property really hasn't moved much over the last 12 to 15 months since we've had Dan Andrews leave the office. So and it has been more compelling for investors to invest in other states because of affordability and of course much better rental laws as well. But what has happened now in the last few months, probably sort of focus more on the last maybe 2 or 3 months. All of a sudden, we are now seeing that the current premier, who is Jacinta Allen, has looked at this space a lot more aggressively, and a lot more changes are coming into this space. And we're not just talking property; we're talking, overall shaking up in the major housing shake-up that we're looking at, both from construction perspective to even creating new dwellings, so we can make things a lot more available to to Victorians as there's population boom, just after COVID as such. So in the context of what we are talking here is that they're trying to incentivize people, obviously, to try and get them into the homes, first home buyers, whether it is now looking at increasing the level of dwellings that they have promised, and the government has actually trying to do everything possible to make that happen. So they're seeing ways how you can do that at a faster rate, in a better way, reduce some of the red tapeism that goes around planning space as well, to try build things faster way, apart from giving incentives like stamp duty, concessions, and so forth, just to make sure that they can bring this into life a lot more, faster way, to make that work for Victorians. And I think it's a good thing in one way to look at it, because if they haven't done that, people are not going to be motivated to either invest or live in. So, in some form or shape, I would say it's probably sort of trying to get things go after such a long time, so that people can start looking at Victoria as a state as well, even both for owner occupiers and also for investment purposes as well. Now, going back to the question you really had with, in relation to stamp duty, for example. Now, what has happened in the past is we've seen stamp duty concessions for first home buyers for a very long time. That is still the case right now, up to $750,000 that people, first home buyers, can go and access the stamp duty concession. There is no stamp duty in Victoria for first home buyers under 600, and then it's a scaled version up to 750. And of course, a lot of it is also dependent on your income test and so forth. It was also available for owner occupiers as well, who may not be the first home buyers, up to 550K position. But now the new reform that's coming to this space is that, especially for off the plan type apartments and townhouses that are being built, which basically means they need to be in a strata position. What that means is, for example, if I build a duplex and I can then strata title it by having two different titles on it, or I can build another building with lots of apartments and then strata title them later and then sell them individually. That's what we're talking as being off the plan, that they haven't really shaped up. It's basically that thing that the building has to still happen, the construction still needs to happen. That's the type of properties that there is a concession right now for anyone to get their hands on. This includes first home buyers, even for that matter, investors, where they get a stamp duty concession on brand new off the plan apartments, or for that matter, townhouses. This does not include standard land and house packages that we have. So if you have a land and you want to build on it, which is an independent house, for example, or an independent land, it is not available for that. It is available for only strata type properties at this stage.
Okay, for the viewers who may not know, what is strata title?
That's exactly what I try to explain. Is that, let's say I want to get a high rise going in one of the in major Melbourne CBD area. I would demolish the old building and actually put another maybe 50-story building. And once I build that building up and I've got all the apartments in there, before the building is completed, you go through a titling process with the titling office. And what that means is actually chopping that up into multiple apartments so I can sell them individually, essentially, right? So if every floor had, let's say, 10 apartments on it, and I had a 50 apartment building, you've got 500 apartments to sell, essentially, which happens after titling is done. And same concept is also that I've got a property which is an individual property on a very old building on a land of, say, maybe of 800 square meters, and I want to demolish that and actually build maybe 3 townhouses out of that. And these are houses which are not independent, but they are sort of in a strata structure, which means They have the same roof line, but they're probably partitioned by a wall to separate them out. Then I would go through the strata process to try separate them out and sell them individually. So more like a row house type of a concept, if you understand what I'm saying, right? Rather than actually independent individual townhouses that you're creating as a result of that. So if you subdivide and build a second one completely independent to the first one, then that's not what it applies. But if I was to build, let's say, a duplex and I put that together and then strata title it to, you might see the middle, areas of, let's say, Footscray or any of those type of areas, you see quite prominent where they demolish it and then they build side by side two houses with a wall separating the two homes. That basically means it's all under the same roof line, but then it's under the strata scheme as such, which basically means that to sell them individually, I need to go through the titling similar to the apartment process.
Very smart. I think it's directly addressing the behavior of buyers to look at these properties and encourage more building so that the land optimization can be more and more, isn't it so?
Right. So the intention is to bring in more dwellings. Now, if they have to build 80,000 new homes per year for the next 10 years, how can I do it in the fastest, smartest way? By actually encouraging the construction industry to build something at volumes and then sort of strata title them to be able to enable more dwellings as such.
So it's
So,
going to
Anubhav,
encourage. Sorry, Harshit, go ahead.
the reason is this is great initiative from the government perspective, their political agendas and everything, right? But this kind of property, is this the right type of investment for home buyers who will get some equity in future? Isn't it the riskiest investment that I'll be doing if I'm a first home buyer, or even I'm planning to start, my property journey as an investor?
Yeah, look, it all depends on how you look at this investment. See, every segment of property has its own market. So townhouses and apartments sort of are clubbed under units as such, and that has its own market. The 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, 4 bedroom units as such, and then you've got independent houses that's got its own market as well. Now, the growth rate of units versus houses will all depend on where these are actually being built and what is the supply demand of that particular area. So it's hard to say without actually doing analysis on a particular type of property and saying whether this is going to grow or not in value. In general, if I was to talk, apartments usually don't have much growth attached to it, especially in a big building structure and being very much inner city sort of thing. But if you were to sort of build a similar small apartment size of block, let's say in one of the suburbs where there is a need for individuals in high growth area, in good school areas where there's not much land left, but they're sort of building maybe 3 level, 4 level apartment sort of style type of properties, the answer could be quite different to actually going into right inner city CBDs where they can, at any point in time spin up another building with multiple residences over there, as an example.
So
But having
just
said
on,
that,
Mhm.
yeah.
Just on that, how can a first time investor or a first time property buyer, right? They are buying their primary place of residence for the first time. How is there any key mantra or anything that you would like to share? What to look at this kind of investment as well, so that there are so many moving parts. If but. So, is there any 2 or 3 key points you can give it to them so that they know that at least what they're buying will grow or at least will safeguard them from any future burns?
Yeah, I think supply demand is the biggest element of it to really understand what sort of supply is happening in a particular area, what sort of construction is coming up. Because, as I said, the stamp duty concession, we are also seeing Jacinta Allen announcing, 27 or maybe I think 27 greenfield areas where they want to build more land and house package and unlock some of the land around Melbourne as well, so that you can actually get into greenfield as well. So all these new changes that are coming up, you have to really analyze where the supply is going to be over the next 5 years, right? Number one. Second, the budget will play a big role in this. So if someone's got $500,000, and if it's for you to live in, go live in any way you want, because you're not really looking at growth from the property perspective. But if it's investment, you've got to make the right choices. That is metro more important than regional for you? And if you think metro is going to grow, but that's going to be an apartment as a choice, you might be wrong, because regional might actually do a better job in an independent land with a more land content than actually the house itself. So in general, if you're just going to buy and hold, I would still stay away from buying into apartment style type of property right in the inner city of Melbourne as such, because they would really not grow, but sort of give you a yield that looks like high yield, although it might not be, because there is a lot more to do with the other costs that would come in, which normally is not seen after you buy apartments. For example, you've got body corporate and all that, which can really sort of eat up your profits as such, or cash flow. So you have to be very careful with that. But if you are going to, let's say, buy something to renovate and then sort of maybe get an uplift, that's a great result as well, because you could be in a short term sort of thing into it where you're renovating an apartment and then maybe selling off at the back of that to someone else. So you're not holding that stock for growth, but you're getting the uplift through the renovation as such. And if you got the developer mindset right now, I think with all the planning changes that are coming up, the reforms that are getting better for subdivision purposes as well, is going to make a lot more, it's going to allow a lot more people to be able to do subdivisions faster. And buying something that has an opportunity where you can subdivide, build strata type of properties with duplexes, whether you're sort of, let's say it's a 800 square meter block, and I can then do two subdivision, one in the front, one at the back, and I've got two road accesses, for example. But on each one of them, I can build two duplexes just as a small project. That's going to be a lot more, far more viable right now for someone to buy into, because there is demand for that, right? And as a project, because it is development, you're going to make money out of it if you do your numbers the right way. But for
Yep.
someone who's
And
simply stick to the basics for now, if you don't know much, if you don't know how to do due diligence, type of properties that have got good land content and an established property that you can get a good rental yield, and stick with that. Don't get carried away with this 1 year stamp duty benefit that you're getting, which is only going to last 1 year. It is an incentive to get things moving. We don't know how far it's going to last. So stamp duty shouldn't be the reason why you're investing or into such things at all. There has to be a
okay.
bigger strategy attached with it.
Perfect. And I have a question from Vivek Krishnan. He did mention, isn't it better to, to pay entire stamp duty to buy established and get rent from day one, rather than trying to save on stamp duty and buy a new one with a higher construction cost and wait? I will add one
Absolutely.
thing: wait and pray.
Wait. Look, I think we've always been very much savvy around, buying established properties, and buy what you see, and then pretty much get to settlement and get your rent going from day one, because you know the condition of the property that you're buying into, and it also allows you to, not only focus on what you're buying, but the improvement that you can make with older buildings, and improve value down the line for yourself. Even if market goes sideways, you can still uplift the value of the property. Like, for example, I can convert 3 bedroom into 4 bedroom if it's got a really good plan, or I can convert 3 bedroom into 6 or 7 bedrooms as well. In fact, in Victoria, I can go up to 9 bedroom and actually rent it room by room as well, which is called shared accommodation. And that's a classic thing that you can do in Victoria, only up to 9 bedroom, 9 bathroom style type of property. And that can be converted quite easily if you've got a good floor plan. So I think there is the abundance of opportunities that you can do something with established. With brand new, I agree. I mean, as I said earlier, stamp duty shouldn't be the reason why you should be going and buying an apartment or properties like that, just to save on small little amount of stamp duty, which is not aligned with your goals at all.
Yeah, I have a bit of a different perspective because we are having this discussion. The socioeconomic profile of a buyer is also getting served by some assets like these. So there are younger age groups who want to be closer to universities, cities, transport hubs. Single mothers, single fathers, they have to sometimes, if they are separated, they have to be in the same suburbs. For example, Point Cook does not have a lot of 1 or 2 bedroom units, which are practical for a separated man or a woman when they have to co-parent the kids where they are going to the same school zones, right? And they end up either sharing 2 or 3 bedrooms with some other people or whatever. So there is a demand for those sort of assets which are lightweight, which they can afford, they can live, that can still serve their purposes. From affordability perspective, I mean, Melbourne is already 60, 70 kilometer each direction where we go. Councils, for a reason, are struggling with releasing land because land release, as much as normal people don't understand, it's a 200-year planning to release the land. because it's an uncivilized part of the land which is going to get civilized. So there are so many estates outside Melbourne that their construction cycles to populate the estate for to 70-80% takes 5 to 6 years before they become like a proper serviced suburb with medical facilities, school and education needs, health facilities. The police stations are not there. So for the sake of buying, for the sake of releasing the land, they will. But until the point it really becomes a suburb where it's really serving the need of the community as compared to any other grown-up suburb, it takes some time. So either you keep on releasing land without train lines, with extending bus services and all that, which doesn't help in a lot of Melbourne weather. So the only way to go is to go up the third dimension, as we are seeing. What's your view on this, Anubhav?
Yeah, look, I mean, I guess it is quite pocket demographics dependent as well. For example, if you look at the west of Melbourne, there's just land and land and land. That's all you see. You go on Google Map and you can, outside Point Cook or even for that matter, Wyndhamville and so forth, you can only see land. And you can imagine how much land can come into residential sector to be able to continue to develop that. And quite frankly speaking, I mean, west of Melbourne hasn't doubled in last 10 years. As compared to southeast, for example, where there is less land available for it to get into residential space. So, if I look at VIC as an example, and Clyde North, these areas have really done far better than actually the west of Melbourne from growth aspect, right? So it really comes down to what sort of building is available, what are you investing in? Like Point Cook does have these small homes that you mentioned, to cater to these elderly people. But that doesn't necessarily mean in a suburb like Point Cook, these are going to grow, apart from the fact that it doesn't have any land content. Townhouse is not going to make very well in terms of growth because it's not the right type of product for the area. The demand is for families. The demand is for, bigger homes. So that's what there is demand for. There's demand for downsizing elements as well. And this is really where I think going back to the whole purpose of today's topic is what Jacinta Allen is trying to do is create spaces for people who want to downsize, sell up, like for example, properties in Point Cook and live in Melbourne inner city that can actually really help them get the advantage right now, stamp duty, but at the same time give them the livability factor that they desire, for example, right? So it's perfectly for them, but that doesn't mean it's the right investment product as such, right?
Okay.
And when you're talking to a developer and you're trying to figure out what does this off the plan look like, you have to look at how many more developers are going to be motivated to do this, right? And it's hard to figure out at a point in time in a short period of 12 months. So while it is still positive from the overall purpose of doing this, by bringing in some sort of incentive for increasing the number of dwellings in Victoria to address the problem that we're talking about, I think the investors and astute investors should really be cautious of luring themselves towards getting into the stamp duty trap. I would say that way for now.
Okay.
Right. But if you have a development mindset and you want to be a developer or you're already developing, it's a great opportunity right now to get into something like this because there will be people who will want a product like that and you will have a ready market to go. In fact, your pre-sales on a development project can be far better because that's really the whole intention of trying to reform the entire area, right from construction building to actually making sure that there is enough dwellings being built per year with a target that they want to meet. Of course, I think at this point in time, all this looks really nice and cool on paper. When it actually starts to happen, the challenges that people will, the developers will go through, that's a secondary thing. I mean, who knows how long a building is going to take to be built, right? And who knows what the price points are going to look like. So I think there's a lot of ifs and buts right now, but I think just as an initiative, it's great that they're doing something about it.
Interesting. I have a question from Elliot. What tool to use to analyze the supply or demand in a particular area?
Yeah, it's a classic question, and the answer is not one supply demand. Although there is a tool called demand and supply ratio (DSR), which can actually sort of give you some sort of that one single tool can give you a number of attributes that you look at to look at demand and supply. It even gives you a scoring based on that. I wouldn't totally rely on it because it's a very technical tool based on certain data points that it has collected over the years. There's nothing right now with whatever is happening with changes that Jacinta is bringing in. This is all new. It's fundamentally looking at what government is trying to do and talking to councils in real time to understand where the changes are really going to happen and how many developments are they actually planning or thinking of to really understand supply. And no tool can tell you that on the fly. It's really just trying to gauge that talking to multiple people. It's not tool driven. Demand is based on obviously demographics. So a lot of that through ABS that you can actually see what type of demand there is for the area, but also talking to developers and real estate agents to really understand in real time. Also, days on market can actually help you understand that better. How long is the stock staying in the market? But to choose the type of property to buy for investment, that needs deeper due diligence than just supply and demand.
Perfect. Thanks, Anubhav. And that clarifies because I believe all this comes down to strategy. And even the finding the property is based on your strategy. What is your suitability in the current market? That brings me to the next question. With the interest rates and everything, how are you advising investors to adjust their strategies to maintain strong returns? So it's a strategy questions because interest rates are high. Some of people are coming out of their fixed rates and now they're struggling. So what is what is what are your key points for the investors to adjust their strategies?
Yeah, look, I think a lot of it is to look at the interest rates, of course, and go back to the brokers and reevaluate some of the interest rates. And, the fixed rates are starting to come down. Although I'm not encouraging, personally speaking, I mean, it's an opinion that I don't encourage anyone going and locking themselves into fixed rates right now, knowing that interest rates reduction is on the horizon and it will happen probably in the next 6 to 8 months, based on, what we're hearing from analysts as well. So that's one part. Secondly, what you can get into is see how negatively your portfolio is and look at opportunities where if the property is not going to give you enough or grow enough in the next few years, do an opportunity cost analysis on it and see how you can maybe recycle that out of your portfolio and buy something that is more cash flow ready to go. For example, you can get into Airbnb properties, right? Airbnb is a great strategy to really unlock your cash flow straight away, right? Which most of our clients are looking at options where obviously there are lots of hotspots and tourist spots that are there around the country, and you're not limited just to Victoria in that scenario, right? And there is a DNA tool which is really gives you the demand supply part of it from Airbnb properties point of view. It is costly. You have to obviously it's a paid tool. You have to subscribe to it, but you can go into ADNA and actually go into a suburb and look at what is the actual demand in this area, how many properties are being listed on Airbnb, what sort of, what are the peak times during the year that this particular area gets the attraction. So you can do a lot of that analysis through ADNA to really figure out if this is the right spot for me for Airbnb. But that's a great cash flow strategy. So that's what I would do. Secondly, commercial is a big space right now. Very little people know about commercial, and I think there's a stigma to it that commercial doesn't grow in value, and I would probably disregard that completely. You really need to educate yourself in the commercial space. We buy a lot of commercial properties for our clients. We are seeing positive cash flow from the very get-go, or positively geared properties from the very get-go in the type of commercial we are buying. Not every commercial will give you positively geared with today's interest rate, but that is still a possibility right now. The third big element is I just touched on it a little bit earlier is on rooming houses, for example. If you can get yourself into as many as lettable doors that you can actually allow for that to happen, that can give you better cash flow. And that could be a block of units as well. So let's say you buy instead of buying a dual occupancy property where you're getting 2 rents, you can buy maybe 4 or 5 blocks of units where you're getting 4 or 5 rents. Or you can buy a standard house and convert that into a rooming house with, say, a 4-bedroom can expand into maybe 7 or 8 bedrooms, or maybe 9 bedrooms for that matter, as I said earlier, and rent each room, pretty much legally, and that will allow you to be able to collect more rent from the same property as such. Then there is another strategy, which is disability sector NDIS, which is National Disability Insurance Scheme. I'm not very savvy. I don't like that strategy much because a lot of that control is with the government. But it is currently in today's circumstances, it's definitely a cash cow as well. So each of these strategies has its own pros and cons. There's no advice here, but that's what you would do if you were looking for cash flow today.
So one very important question that's been asked in a different format, Anubhav, in almost every Q&A that we do, and it's like, is there any key metric or indicators you are tracking that signals when it might be a good time to buy or hold off?
That is the problem itself, because people are looking at timing the market. And yes, because unless you are really professional in this space and running this for a while, you can learn to time the market to maximize the outcome, which we do for our clients. But if you are not a, for example, I would compare this analogy to a day trader versus a long-term share trading investor, right? If you are a passive investor in share trading, for example, it's like, I'm going to put into indices and just leave it there and let it do its job over the next 10 years. Then the timing the market for property doesn't matter. You get into it with the right fundamentals, you get into it with the right, price point, and look at the right sort of yield that you're getting into it, and do your right due diligence. And you can leave it, set and forget for a few years. Obviously monitor it, but you could be on a good growth trajectory as a result of that. But if someone is like a lot more savvy and is really into property every single day, then you can try to time it. Yeah, I would say probably right now, we know interest rates are going to come down. As soon as that happens, people have more borrowing capacity. People will open up their wallets. People are cashing up right now over the last year or so, and they're not really spending the money. They're all waiting for interest rates to go down before they spend the money, in property. This is the time. If you use this time effectively, you can absolutely get into the next wave of growth, in your property portfolio. And again, this is not an advice. I would say probably, talk to the professionals and get yourself into the right markets, because you could choose the wrong market. The timing is right, even though the timing is right, and stuff it up. So, it needs a lot more analysis than just talking to what I'm saying right now to you, blanketly.
It's quite deep, Anubhav, and it's not about the right time, right? It's when you're ready, get in it, right? And just dig in. One question, what are the common mistakes you're seeing investors are making in today's market, and how can they avoid them? This is a very generic question, but based on, I would need to pick your brain on it. What is your general observation?
Yeah, the first thing is that people are very emotional with their properties, right? And they buy with emotion even the investment property, and that basically means that they end up buying something that is either not going to be right for their portfolio, or they just don't know what they're doing. That's number one. Second, most people, being a human tendency of knowing familiarity is important to them, so they end up buying most of their assets around where they live, right? So, and we've seen this again and again over the last 6 years, that majority of the portfolio is built around where they live. So that means the outcome is going to be quite similar. It may be different suburbs, but if you're in the same area pocket, you're sort of heavily invested into one space. And we know that the golden rule of any investment is to diversify. So there's an opportunity to look at if someone's holding a portfolio for the last 3, 4, 5, or even 10 years, go back, look at what's the rate of growth been. What's happened 10 years ago doesn't mean it's going to grow at the same rate right now. So doing those analysis year on year is really important to understand where the portfolio is going. And if it is not really making sense, it is important to start looking at it now and saying, okay, can we repivot something now and actually get myself out of this problem and get myself into something which is right. The third thing that people are really right now, most people do this, which I know out of experience, is that people know that they have to sell their properties, right? That they don't want to hold a certain type of property in a certain area. But they, especially in Victoria market, they're waiting for market to improve, so they can make, they can sell and get another $50,000, $100,000 out of it. What they don't realize is that market is, going to go up in the next 6 to 8 months when interest rates go down. Then all of the markets are also going to do the same thing, right? And if you want to repurpose at that point in time, you're going to lose out on heavily on the actual amount of money that you can make in other market right now. So, and the reason people can't see that as a problem, because they don't know what they're comparing against. So if I'm going to get a flat growth over the next 6 months, whereas the next 6 months can capitalize a 2 or 3 or 4% growth in another market, you're already making your 50K by selling something today, rather than waiting for another 6 months and making 50K on the asset you already hold right now. You could be far better off in 12 months by selling off that now and actually buying something that is right in today's market and waiting on 12 months on that. And that can fetch you maybe 10 to 15% growth that we have seen previously for our clients in the last few years. So I think if you're confused, I think that's where the professionals are really required to be able to help you, look at that. a little more deeper in your portfolio.
So the next question from Saurabh, which is related to my next question as well from the audience, it is, are you seeing a shift in the investment preferences, houses versus units, inner city versus regional, among your investor clients? What's driving these changes?
Look, I think it's affordability being one of the big factors. Rather than buying a 700, 800K property in a metro, it's a lot more easier to buy a 500K property. It's also true for home occupiers and also investors for that matter. That's number one. The second is the cash flow. So some of these properties are obviously far better yields as compared to a bigger house and, on a big land size with a independent house. So like apartments can give you really good, better yields as compared to a house. And that can attract on paper very easily to for people to shift into this. The third is what people can resonate with as a type of investment. So for example, if I talk to Asian community, they are a lot more comfortable with an apartment thought process, and it's a lot more relatable to them because that's what they've lived in all their life, and it's easy to get attracted towards an investment like that in Australia as well. It might not be the right thing to do, but it is easily sellable as a concept to them, right? So therefore it is important to understand what you're buying, where you're buying, and what is the need and what is the demographic of the area that grows that area, how people move in Australia. And trends are changing all the time, right? What happened in COVID, what's happening post COVID is very different. It is not the same. So you can't put the same lens on that we had in COVID or pre-COVID or post-COVID. They're all different. And therefore, markets have to keep moving at the pace, and we have to keep moving with the pace to see what is going on. On top of that, the government actions are really important. So I'm closely watching what the premier is doing in this space. There are rental laws right now that have come in, and one of the things that says no fault eviction, right? You cannot evict someone with there is no fault for them to go out of the property, and that's completely banned right now, right? This is just introduced about a few days ago. So we are watching things, with a microscopic view, because all of these decisions that are being made, the legislation that is changing, the reforms that are coming in the industry, have an impact on property in Victoria, right? And it also allows us to pivot towards the right type of property to buy for the right type of client, right? It also depends that the choice that we make with the property type that we are buying will also depend on the age group of the client as well and what portfolio they currently hold. So there are so many factors to consider: the goals, the strategies, within what's a long-term strategy, what are they doing in general with the cash flow position. A lot of that comes into play when we are deciding, what type of asset is right based on things that are happening right now and where is the money to be made in today's market.
And just on that, one of the player is, how are rising construction costs impacting property values and opportunities for renovation or development projects? Because they sound great, development projects, subdivision, crazy outcome, right? Subdivisioning and all that. But how are you seeing that? How can they? What's the impact on the values from the investment perspective?
Look, this is quite evident, and we have seen this not just now, but also over a period of time. It is quite clear to us that if you just look at just after COVID, what happened is the prices just went up, right? The construction costs have accelerated. In fact, construction costs after COVID is nearly 35% over than what it was before COVID, as you know, right? So what that meant is that if the new stock that is available in the market is 35% higher than established properties will also gain momentum, and the prices have gone up for established as well, because overall there is an uplift in the area, right, as a result. So someone choosing brand new stock versus established, the difference is starting to close up, right? But everything is going to go up. So if you have an established property and there is new development happening in that area with new prices that is going to happen, it's going to uplift the established properties as well, because there cannot be too much difference between the two as a result. So therefore, from a growth point of view, it's a good thing to look at to buy established. But if you're going into brand new right now, paying that higher dollars, with the new construction, there's also one more thing to be aware of. There are marketeers in the market who are selling builders product to people, and there's a lot more, there's line items being built into this full construction cost, where a lot more people are feeding themselves through this whole construction space. And what that means is, we buy something for 700-800K type property on a 200-300 square meter land. you could be much better off buying something for 600, 700K established property with a much bigger land size than getting attracted towards brand new builds. And again, I'm talking very general. It may not suit everyone. Everyone's scenario is different, but I'm just talking in general what we are seeing and how people are buying and what they get attracted towards. A lot more people get attracted towards with brand new because they can get concessions, they can get deductions, and get the benefit of that. But what they don't realize is that when they have to sell the property, 50% of that at least gets adjusted against the capital gain as such. So again, I'm not an accountant, but that's what my understanding is. So people should check on that. All that cash flow positive after tax can really benefit them or not down the line.
Another thing is all these changes, government, we can see the government is trying to get some traction, more housing and all that. The key question is whether the property, is this the right time to buy in Victoria? Whether prices will go up for the investors' perspective. I'm not looking at first-time investors. I'm looking at first-time investors, not for home buyers. Just from investment perspective, is this the right time for them to make a decision? Because I get this question every now and then.
Victoria, we are back in Victoria buying properties, but again, very, very, very specific markets. We are not buying anything at this stage in Metro for investments, for investors. But we are doing that in some of the regional areas. Now, it can sort of, if I just blanketly say yes, Victoria is good to buy, people will just end up buying anything, just going on their advice. So I think you have to tread carefully what you're picking up, where you're picking up in Victoria at this stage, especially knowing that every second, third, fourth day right now, there is a new announcement that's coming up from Jacinta with the housing changes that are happening. I think keep an eye on that, peel your eyes to what government is doing. If you're not really looking at the news, I think you should be really reading through all that, because all these changes mean something over a period of time, and that will help you make the right decision for yourself if Victoria is right. But it's hard for me to, knowing how much I know, it's very hard for me to just tell you the answer is yes.
And to be honest, I agree with you, Anubhav, because what's happening is from suddenly everybody knew that Victoria hasn't, Melbourne prices haven't grown as compared to any other metros or anyway. So now everybody's just waiting for something to happen in Victoria, whether it's interest rate going down or some new policies coming around the elections as they move on. But as you're right that all these are confusing the investors as well. What should I invest in? Which area? Yes, Victoria is coming up. Everybody is saying Victoria will come up. But should I enter now? What should I buy? And that's where big, major confusion is happening. So as you said that, trade.
Yeah. I think long term, Victoria has got good, obviously, opportunity and scope. Clearly, because if they're trying to increase the dwellings, there is a demand for Victoria. Of course, people want to live in Victoria. Melbourne population is going up, probably more than Sydney as well, probably already crossed Sydney population. So it is important that that gets addressed. But I can't see Victoria not stepping up. It will. It's just a matter of time. But what happens is the next 12 months are tough, right? Because lots of things are on the cards at this point in time. Apart from all these new regulations and reforms that are coming, we are also going to see state elections happening next year as well. So we don't know what that is going to look like. Plus, we've got interest rates on the rising that will come down. Plus, we've got these changes that we just talked about. So a lot of this is in flux, right? It is to be watched what happens. But broadly, if you are a long-term investor, you won't go wrong as far as Victoria is concerned. But don't expect a double-digit growth in the next 12 months in Victoria. That's probably not happening, which is what we are seeing in other states over the last 2-3 years. So that's my normal understanding. Unless you do something with the property to improve its value, just buying and holding over the next 12 months is questionable with the double-digit growth in any area.
And that's where it's not just about Victoria. Yes, that's a puzzle that will, that will take time, how it evolves, because we are watching the market closely. All these things, every statement, government statement, cost, everything has an impact on it. But for investors, how can they balance between buying for capital growth versus cash flow, especially given the current market fluctuations? It makes that decision much more complicated.
Yes. And that's why it's important, as I said earlier, to review your current portfolio. How much negatively geared are you? And what do you need in your portfolio next to continue to grow? What that means is that if it's stopping you to buy your next property because you're heavily negatively geared. So something has to go from the portfolio, right? Or you have to make some changes to that property to bring its position back into that's digestible. But if you're not in the thing of making changes yourself and it's easy to buy and sell and get rid of it, then that's the way to go about it. And but what you choose next is important. That will help your portfolio. So in most cases, people who run out of borrowing capacities because they are quite negatively geared, and to really balance that, we talked about strategies earlier that can really give you good cash flow and can balance that for you. There are also ways of how you buy the property in trust and actually see how you can get through some of the lending criterias waived off. You got to talk to the right professionals to continue to see how you can keep borrowing without having to get stuck. And there are ways to do that, but it's just that you really need to tap in and speak to the right professionals how you can make this happen for yourself.
Wow. So solution is available. You just need to tap the shoulder of the professional. Hey, I need help. And this is the situation.
Yeah.
So help is available.
Yeah. Look, Puru is big in talking through all this, right? And he always educating his buyers to look at mindset. And this is all about mindset. If you don't have a millionaire mindset, it's not going to work, right? And it's important to first understand your risk appetite and really have the room to grow here and listen to things and be open to other things, and then you can work with the right professionals to make things work, right? And just on that, before we go any further on questions, there's one point that I want to make, given the topic is with stamp duty concessions. As I said, it's available to people who are first-home buyers, home buyers, and also to investors. It is also available to foreign purchases as well. The stamp duty concession for off the plan, but what they don't get concession on stamp duty is the additional stamp duty that foreign buyers have to pay. That is not, there's no concession on that. It's on the base level stamp duty concession that others are getting. So it's important to make that point because a lot more in 2017, I know the government has actually made an announcement to boost first home buyers to get into properties. They put in this additional layer for to stop foreign buyers to buy a lot more assets over here, and they put a lot more constraints around that time frame going back to 2017. And I know it happened in real time at that point in time. So now this is the first change I have seen for foreign buyers to be able to secure something so they can actually bring in probably what the government is trying to do is to boost that inflow so that the more dwellings can be built and a lot more you can actually have the right type of tenants to be able to occupy these type of properties as well, essentially, so that it can actually get roof over people's head.
This is interesting, quite insightful.
Very interesting.
And there is no price cap and there is no income limit to this stamp duty scenario. So it is quite compelling for a lot of people because people will first see where I can save costs and actually looking at the overall strategy. For obviously, foreign buyers, they've got stash of cash. They just put the money out there. And yes, if I can save money, why not? Because anyway, they have to go through FIRB approvals. And what that means is there's an application fee, then there is additional stamp duty and so forth. So any deduction right now, it helps the foreign investors to invest. And there will be lots and lots of companies that will go berserk over the next 12 months to try sort of get that funding into Victoria to help the construction take off faster.
Just on that, Anubhav, because this is, I think, a typical question for buyer's agent, right? People want to know. People who they call themselves educated via Google or Google doctors, Google property investors. So I have a question. Are there any specific type of properties or regions that offer better value for investors right now, given the recent market shifts? It's a very generic question. They don't want to talk about strategy or whatever. Standard question.
Look, I guess if you have land content with established properties with 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom in the right area, and land will always do better as long as supply is limited in the areas. You won't go wrong from a long-term perspective, especially if you've got a plan to keep that for 10 years, 15 years, you'll be fine. Just look out for the negative cash flow position on that property and have enough ability to be able to hold that property, or then you can look at commercial aspect as well, which gives you cash flow from day one. And we specialize under $1 million purchase price for commercial, so that can open up a lot more avenues for people who have 300K lying around, whether through equity or cash, that can give them the position to be able to secure good retail style type of commercial that can give them positively get properties from day one.
And just on that, Anubhav, because you have been in this market for the last 6 years, you've seen all the patterns, right? Post COVID, you did mention explicit patterns post COVID. Anything, are you saying it's becoming more riskier to invest, or it's getting simpler, or it's more predictable? What are you seeing the pattern?
I think I'm seeing a lot of FOMO actually because whilst I've got 25 years of experience and I've been in Melbourne for 20 years and I've seen the markets move quite a bit, and it doesn't matter whether it was GFC or COVID. The recent events that are happening, which are outside our control, generally are allowing a lot more changes to happen. And governments have obviously taken the step forward to, spin whatever they can to bring in new policies in different states, and that is changing the consumer behavior, right, of how they're buying, what they're buying, where they're living, what they want to live in. But the trend that is clear to me right now is that smaller homes are becoming more popular because they are more affordable, right? And what that means is it goes back to the point of Jacinta trying to, create new dwellings in a strata type of properties, because not only on a small land you can build more, but at the same time it is becoming a popular thing for people who are singles, who are maybe even married but don't have children, for that matter divorces, or even for that matter people who are obviously vulnerable to the space of low income earners, or even for that matter retirees, right? So yeah, so having that small spaces creates a market for people to be able to capture that. And there are a lot more baby boomers right now than they were ever there before, because people who came in 1940s, 1950s in this country are baby boomers today, right? The next 10 years, it is important that where they live is going to become their home, and they're going to downsize, right? And if you look at suburbs aren't built for something like that, for downsizes at all, because you've got backyards everywhere, and they can't handle that type of property, right? They cannot handle that type of big houses, maintenance, and all that. So they need, in the same area, they need smaller spaces, like what Puru was saying earlier, right? But if you build too much of it, there's a problem,
Mm.
So,
right? So
yeah. So given these approvals for apartments and all this can take 6 to 12 months, and the stamp duty is given, there is a lot of up in the air.
well, that's exactly where the planning is also being right now being restructured, because
Hmm.
right from subdivision planning timeframes are usually that in Victoria takes 12 months to get an approval. They're overhauling the whole thing right now. Even some of the bodies like Victorian Building Authority as such is also going to be demolished, and it's going to be, I think, renamed, or it's all turning into one single regulator, and it's going to be called it's a bigger watchdog, which is going to be called Building and Plumbing Commission. So that will oversee building as well as plumbing industries across the entire state, essentially. And what that means is, of course, they're not just looking at one thing, okay, just go build something, but they're also looking at, okay, how can we make things easier for people to subdivide properties faster than what we did earlier. And the whole thing with this 12-month thing is that all you need is a contract signed after 21st of October this year, right? As soon as that is happening and it's an off the plan thing that will tick the boxes, you're in it basically. It doesn't mean that the building has to be completed by then, as such, based on my understanding.
We have a question here from Elliot. Don't you think this concession will be chewed up by the developers by inflating the property prices?
Always has happened in the past whenever things have come to the market like that. But right now, I'm sure if the watchdog, they're shifting that whole industry to look at things, what's happening. No one can control prices what developers are putting there, and it's a small amount to adjust against a 700-800K type of property. So you never know, it may adjust somewhere and get inflated. So historically, we've seen that happen. Whenever there has been a first home buyer grants or whatever has happened, we know that gets adjusted somewhere. So this is my personal opinion. Again, I don't have facts to sort of talk right now on this call live on socials, but we know that it is quite clear.
Interesting. Only 3 minutes left now, Anubhav. Um, any key things? As I said, that overall, the temperament is people are watching, waiting. All the stars will meet, all the cosmic thing will happen. Then I will make a move. So, what is your statement to those investors who have the money but don't have courage to get in the market. They are just sensing, testing the water, but have not made a decision to get in. What is your message to them?
Yeah, look, I think they're missing the confidence factor, right? And I think to build the confidence, you need to speak to professionals, because if you can't figure this out yourself, something is missing that is not completing the picture in the head, right? And buyer agent's role right now in the market is pivotal to get you, and not every buyer agent can talk to that sort of breadth of spectrum of things, but if you choose the right partner whom you can talk to, discuss your situation, and who can give you a good breadth of things that are possible in your scenario, give you options that you can do. It'll help you understand that better. It'll give you an action plan. I have to sell one of these two properties in the next 6 months, and then in parallel, I can go and buy something else because I've got money, maybe in superannuation, if that's what I think, based on the financial advisor or whatever. And people may not have thought through that, as an example, right? But you need to speak to someone who understands the property landscape better, and then give you options based on your current circumstances to add more confidence, and then hold your hand throughout the process.
And same thing, I believe you will agree, to build a portfolio, you need an A team, which you have. I always remember your A team definition, which is your accountant, mortgage broker, or a financial advisor, and a buyer agent to build a portfolio, right? So it becomes, we hold your hand and help you through the journey, right?
It's a starting point from a planning perspective, and then it sort of leads into execution with a lot more professionals that are required during the acquisition of the property, depending on what they're doing. But yeah, you're right.
Awesome. I think that's it for me, because I think there were quite a few questions, but you summarized them, you covered them from all aspects, because that's where your experience comes in and above, because you covered it from 360-degree perspective. So everybody could relate to it. That's why I didn't ask you specific questions, because you covered a lot of topics in that statement. And I would recommend to all the audiences to go through this video, because quite of key nuggets in this. And yeah, and that's it. And Puru, anything from you?
No, I think it was quite insightful, because we do a lot of investment work. Sometimes we lose sight of the challenges which renters and home buyers are facing. So from that perspective, it looks like the sunshines will be blocked by the big 3D rise of the city, which is inevitable. But at the same time, it's for 1 year, so it's too early to say anything.
Yeah, look, there is a real shake-up happening in Victorian industry, in the property industry. It is really important. My key message today would be is to really keep an eye on government changes that are happening. No tool can tell you what this will sort of end up doing, and how things will look like. And there's no AI tool that will tell you it'll grow X amount of percentage, because data in property, we know, is a lag. So you can't get that on real time basis anyway. So it comes down to experience, and really, diving into the understanding of what does this change mean for the property market in that particular area, and then doing the right due diligence to get the right outcome. It is a lot of work, actually, to really look at all that. So if someone who's really qualified, who's really a astute investor, who understands government actions and how that behavior converts into growth in property, can relate to what I'm saying. But a lot more people are just looking at a press of a button, tell me a tool that's going to give me a suburb, it's going to give me X dollars in X period of time. That doesn't happen when things are shifting on almost every second, third day, especially in a state like Victoria right now.
Wow. Amazing. And you're right, Anubhav, because we all are analysis paralysis guide. We spend 2 steps forward and 4 steps backward, because the tools, the data that's available, and thanks to media as well, the way they are portraying the message. I don't know whether it is for the investors or in front of the government or for some other bodies. So there's moral of the story, there should be somebody who is working for you, looking after your interest. So look for those partners who are genuinely interested in your growth and your strategies. Perfect, Anubhav.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for your time. And Puru, great insight, good questions. Thanks, audience.
Thank you,
All right.
Harshit. You're a
Thank
good
you.
facilitator.
Thank you for hosting us. Thank you. Bye.